You know, it makes you feel more like you came to services for whatever reason you couldn't get there. So why is the rabbi in Cincinnati?
Cleveland.
Cleveland.
Because.
Oh, Micah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I couldn't figure out what Cincinnati had to do with the rabbi, but Cleveland.
Mentioned he didn't realize that it's the women's Final Four, and it's also like one of the hot spots to watch the eclipse.
Oh,
So,
right.
His airfare was quite expensive because of that.
Couldn't find that hard time
He's
finding a
got
hotel
the
too.
right glasses for watching the eclipse, right?
I'm sure he does.
They just did a piece on the news where a $80 a night hotel room goes to 500.
Yeah. He said he got lucky. There's like an apartment that they rent out that's in Micah's complex. And he said they must have not figured out that they could gouge everybody yet because it was pretty reasonable. So that's what they're saying.
But he wasn't going for any of those reasons. He was just going.
He wasn't aware that those were going on, which is unusual for him not to have at least to handle a sporting event, but you know.
You can't have a handle on a whole.
Tickets for the women's were going for higher than the men's.
Yeah, double,
Yeah, I heard
almost double. 2,000 and something was supposed to 1,000 and something. The women's what? The women's basketball. Oh, yeah, a season.
They're still too short. Should keep going
Well, we'll get
basketball.
started, and our prayers will bring two people. And let's hope for that.
Some woman was marching in during the.
Pretty slowly.
Right, during okay, page 5. Shiru Ladonai Shir Chadash Shiru Ladonai Kol Haaretz Shiru Ladonai Baruch Shema Basru Miyom Liyom Yeshuato Sapru Vagoyim Kevodo Kol Ha'amim Nifleotav Ki Gadol Adonai U'Hu Me'od Norahu Al Kol Elohim Yain Yain Ki Kol Elohei Ha'amim Elilim Ba'adonai Shamayim Asa Od V'Hadar Lefanav Oz V'Tiferet B'Mikdashu Avu Ladonai Mishpechot Amim Avu Ladonai Kavos Avu Ladonai Kevod Shemo Seu Mincha Ubo Lechatzrotav Yain Yain Hishtachavu Ladonai Behadra Kodesh Chilu Mipana Kol Haaretz Imru Vagoyim Adonai Malach Aftikon Tevel Baltimot Yadin Amim B'Meisharim Yismechu Hashemayim B'Tagel Haaretz Yiram Hayam Umelo Yalo Sadai V'Chol Asher Bo Yain Yain Az Yiranenu Kol Atzeyar Lifnei Adonai Ki Ba Lishmot Haaretz Yishmot Tevel B'Tzedek Ve'amim Be'emunato Yain 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 Let's turn to page 12 for Romamu. Romamu Adonai Eloheinu V'Hishachavu Le'ar Kosho. Romamu Adonai Eloheinu V'Hishachavu Adonai Eloheinu Romemu. Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu V'yishtachavu Lehar Kosho. Page 13. Mizmor LeDavid, Havu l'Adonai b'nei Elim, Havu l'Adonai kavod ra'oz, Yai, Havu l'Adonai kevod shemoi, Shachavu l'Adonai b'hadrat kodesh, Kol Adonai al hamayim b'har kavod hirim, Adonai hamayim rabim, Kol Adonai v'koach, Yai, Kol Adonai v'hadar, Kol Adonai shober haratzim, v'shaber Adonai et hazeh havanon, v'yarkidem kemo egel, Lebanon, v'Sirion, kemo ben re'ebim, Yai, Kol Adonai chotzev lavotesh, Kol Adonai yachil midbar, Yachil Adonai midbar kadesh, Kol Adonai yechol el hayalon, vayechesov yeharot, uvechalot, kulo omer kavod, Yai, Adonai, lama bo yashava yeshev Adonai melech le'olam, Adonai oz le'amo yiten, Adonai yivarech et amo b'shalom. Yai, Yai, Page 15. Lecha dodi likra kala pene shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likra kala pene shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad ishmianu el hamichad Adonai echad u'shemo echad l'shemo tiferet v'litila lecha dodi likra kala pene shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likra kala Pene Shabbat nekabela, likrat Shabbat lechu b'necha, ki mekor ha'beracha merosh mekedem nesucha, so ma'aseh b'machshava tchila. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pene Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likra kala, pene Shabbat nekabela. Bottom of 17. Yaminu smolti froti be'et Adonai tarisi al yadish ben artzi v'nismecha ben agila. Lecha dodi likra kala, pene Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likra kala, B'nei Shabbat Nekabela. We rise and face the entrance to welcome the Shabbat bride. Let's hope for 2 Shabbat brides. Boi v'shalom teret bala gam b'simcha u'v'tzola tov emunei am segula. Boi chala lecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela lecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Can be seated. And for any mourners who may be here, Amarkom Yinachem Echem B'tov Sha'ar Le'Tzion B'Yerushalayim. May God comfort you among the other mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. And we are on page 19. Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat Tov Lehodot LaAdonai Ulezamer L'Shimcha Elyon Ulezamer L'Shimcha Elyon L'Hagid B'Boker Chasecha Ve'emunatcha B'Leilot Alei Asor Yaleina Ve'Alei Higayon B'Chinor Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat Tov lehodot la'Adonai ulezamer l'shimcha elyon ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. Continue silently. Tzadik Tamar Yifra Ke'erez Malvanon Yizkeshituli Beit Adonai B'chasrot Eloheinu Yafrichu Od Yenubun B'Sera Deshenim V'Rananim Yiyu L'Hagid Ki Ashar Adonai Tzuri V'Lo Avlatabo Adonai Malach Keyud Lavesh Lavesh Adonai Otzita Zaraf Tikon Tevel Baltimot Nachum Kisacham Ve'az Me'el Amata Nasu Narot Adonai Nasu Narot Olam Nasu Narot Tov Mi Kolot Mayim Mayim Rabim Adirim Mishrei Yam Adir B'Marom Adonai Edotecha Ne'emnu Me'od Le'Beitecha Nava Kodesh Adonai Le'orech Yamim. You can go ahead and rise. Trying to get 2 feet.
Do we need a minute to be Martha?
I
I think we do.
think we do,
I
yeah.
think we do, yeah.
Okay,
All
can we
right.
see it? We'll continue on page 23. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidbaro ma'ari baravim. Borei yom v'layla kol leil or mipnei choshech v'choshech mipnei or ma'avir yom uvein v'layla or ma'avdil ben yom uvein layla Adonai tzvaot shemo Echad v'kayam tamid yimlo kalein le'olam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai Ha'ma'ari baravim. Page 24. Ahavat olam beit Yisrael amchavta Torah u'mitzvot chukim u'mishpatim otanu limadata Aken Adonai Eloheinu v'shafeinu v'kumeinu nasiach b'chukecha v'nizmach b'divrei Toratecha u'b'mitzvotecha li'olam va'ed ki hem chayenu v'yorech yameinu u'bahem negeh yom ha'balayla V'yamaka al tasir b'menu li'olamim Baruch atah Adonai Ohev amo Yisrael. Page 25. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levacha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'otecha v'hayu ha'dvarim ha'eleh asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levanecha v'shinatam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'meitecha u'bleftecha b'derech u'v'shalvecha u'primecha u'kshartam liot al yadecha v'hayu l'tatafot b'einecha u'chtatam al mezuzot beitecha u'b'sharecha. Continue silently on 27. Laman tiskaru basi temet kol mitzvot v'tem kedoshim Elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem Elohim ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem emet. Read at the bottom of page 31 from the Talmud. When the people of Israel stood at the Red Sea, no tribe wanted to be the first to go into the sea. While they were standing around arguing, Nachshon, the son of Amminadab of the tribe of Judah, leaped forward and dove in first. Because it was Nachshon who leaped forward, the tribe of Judah was to obtain a special place in God's sanctuary. Let's follow the example of Nachshon, taking a leap of action in observing commandments, appreciating freedom, being open to the miraculous. U'malchutov v'ratzon kiblu alehem, Moshe b'nei Yisrael, lecha anu shira b'simcha rabba v'yamru chulam. Micha mocha ba'elim Adonai, Micha mocha negar ha'kodesh, norati loto sefer. Malchutecha rohu banecha bokei hayam lifnei Moshe ze'eli anu v'yamru Adonai imloch li'olam va'ed Lemar kipad Adonai Yaakov u'garlu miyad v'chazak mimenu baruch atah Adonai ka'al Yisrael. Page 33. Ashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu malkeinu l'chaim. Ashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu malkeinu l'chaim. Ushmor Seitenu, Uvoenu, Lechaim Shalom, Me'atav Yad Olam. Hashkidenu Adonai, Eloheinu L'Shalom, V'Hamidenu Malkeinu L'Chaim. Ufrasalei Sukkot Shlomecha, Baruch Atah Adonai, Haporei Sukkot Shalom Aleinu, V'Yar Kol Amo Yisrael, V'Yal Yerushalayim. Please rise. We are in the middle of page 34. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, Lasot et ha-Shabbat leToratam berit olam. Ve'ini u'bein b'nei Yisrael oti le'olam, oti le'olam, oti le'olam. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, Lasot et ha-Shabbat leToratam berit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, Lasot et ha-Shabbat leToratam berit olam. U'bayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, Lasot et ha-Shabbat leToratam berit olam. So without a minion, we will skip the Kaddish and go directly to the silent Amidah, which starts on page 37.
ויחולו השמיים והארץ וכל צבאם ויחל אלוהים ביום השביעי מלאכתו אשר עשה וישפוט ביום השביעי מכל מלאכתו אשר עשה ויברך אלוהים את יום השביעי ויקדש אותו כי בו שבת מכל מלאכתו כי בו שבת מכל מלאכתו אשר ברא אלוהים אשר ברא אלוהים לעשות. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו אלוהי אבותינו אלוהי אברהם אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב אלוהי שרה אלוהי רבקה אלוהי רחל ואלוהי לאה האל הגדול הגיבור והנורא אל עליון קונה שמיים וארץ מגן אבות בדברו המחיה מתים במאמרו האל הקדוש שאין כמוהו המניח לעמו ביום שבת קודשו כי בם רצה להניח להם כי בם רצה להניח להם לפניו נעבוד ביראה ופחד ונודה לשמו בכל יום תמיד מעין הברכות אל ההודעות אדון השלום מקדש השבת ומברך שבי ומניח בקדושה לימי דושי עונג זכר למעשה וריש אלוהינו אלוהי אבותינו רצה במנוחתנו קדשנו במצוותיך ותן חלקנו בתורתך סבנו מטובך ושמחנו בישועתך ותאר ליבנו לעובדך באמת והנחילנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה ורצון שבת קודשך וינוחו בישראל מקדשי שמך ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. So we can't do Kaddish Shalom without a name?
So, since we can't do that, we will go directly to a little bit of a drosh here. Nothing too heavy tonight, but I'm going to talk about the parsha we're going to read tomorrow, which is Shmini. Brief summary begins with a description of how Aaron and his sons begin officiating as Kohanim, or the priests. It's called Shmini. It's the first sort of significant word in the parsha, which is the usual naming convention, and it means eighth, because their roles as Kohanim began on the 8th day following their inauguration. So the first part of the parsha that we don't read, we're reading the middle thirds right now, describes a really troubling event where two of Aaron's sons, Nadab and Abihu, are consumed by a strange fire before God. There's lots of interpretations about what really happened and why, differences of opinion about that. And then the middle third of the parsha, this is the part that we read, is a lot of the rules about kashrut, the species that are permissible and forbidden for consumption. And I'm going to talk a little bit, because I was interested in this, about specifically about fish and kashrut. So generally, related to kashrut, land animals have to have both split hooves and chew their cud to be kosher. And we talked about this at Binyan a little bit. It's interesting the way that they actually call out specific animals that do one or the other. For instance, pigs have split hooves, but they don't chew their cud. Camel, I think, is the opposite. Anyway, when those were in the Torah, they actually list the part that they have first. And so there was a nice little drosh about that, about how finding a positive even in something that's not quite acceptable, it was a way to kind of look at the world, to try to accentuate the positive in things, even if something's imperfect. So that's about land animals. Then there's a list of non-kosher birds. They're mostly scavenger type birds. And then there's 4 types of locusts that are kosher, but strict authorities say we're not exactly sure what species they are, and so basically we should refrain from eating them, even though they're listed. Okay, so now about the fish. So what do fish have to be kosher?
Scales.
Fins and scales, right. According to the Talmud, any fish that has scales also has fins. So if the Talmud is your source in that sort of thing, then I don't know, it must be true. And there's no real reason why those types of fish are kosher and why others are not. So it's one of those things we consider a chok, a law, that we're supposed to follow without necessarily understanding exactly why. There's no health reason or anything. None of the kashrut, even though we might have heard this when we were younger a while back, there's no health reasons that kosher animals are any healthier or less healthy than anything else.
Yeah.
Okay, so the fish, they have to have both fins and scales. The scales have to be visible to the naked eye, and they have to be easy to remove by hand or with some sort of instrument. So if you can only remove the scales by like soaking the fish in hot water, for instance, it's not kosher. And that is why the sturgeon apparently is not kosher. It does have scales, but you can't get them off very easily. If it's not completely covered in scales and only has some on part of its body, it's still kosher. But there's the strange case of the swordfish, which is actually quite a nice fish. It has scales when it's young, but it sheds them when it matures into an adult. So it has scales for like 3 or 4 years. According to halakha, it's not kosher. So even though it is born and has scales when it's young, not good enough.
Even if you eat it when it still has.
I was wondering about that, but
Yeah,
then, you know, apparently they say just because we're not sure, you know, we build the
How many
fence around.
scales are enough scales?
I didn't get into that. That's a good question. Some fish have scales while they're in the water, but they shed them when they're caught and they're brought out to dry land, and those are not kosher. This is apparently the case of the Spanish mackerel, so whatever that is. Now everybody knows, I think, shellfish aren't kosher, but there's other sea creatures that don't have fins and scales. They're also not kosher. Octopus, for one, whales, and sharks, for instance, that I believe are mammals. Okay, what about a kosher fish that is found inside the belly of a non-kosher fish? No, it's kosher. Yes, that is kosher. So, you know,
The
If
one
you're-
fish or both.
if you're gutting your catch and you find, you know, a kosher fish in there, you're allowed to eat it. Okay, now, what about caviar? So those caviar is fish eggs. And this is sort of logical. If they come from a kosher fish, they're kosher, and vice versa. So before you eat it, you need to know what kind of fish it came from. So the really famed beluga caviar, which comes from the Caspian Sea, comes from a sturgeon, and so it is not kosher, because as I mentioned earlier, sturgeon is not kosher. But for those who eat sushi, a lot of times they use salmon roe, and because the salmon is kosher, that salmon roe is also kosher. So the eggs go along with the fish. There's no rules about killing fish, slaughtering fish like we have with land animals. Fish is considered slaughtered as soon as you take it from the water. But it's forbidden to eat it while it's alive, which why you would want to, I'm not really sure, but I said read that. And then this is kind of interesting. Fish blood is kosher. So generally blood, because it's a life source and everything else, we're is not. But fish blood is. However, it's forbidden to drink fish blood that is removed from the fish because others may confuse it with animal blood. However, if there are scales in the blood, you can drink it because then it's clearly not animal blood. So this is the halakha.
What do you do
I
with
didn't think
scales
that
and-
fish had blood.
Yeah, fish have blood.
Fish
Yeah.
have blood.
You ever catch a fish and hook it in the wrong place, they
Totally.
bleed.
I never had.
Okay, now about eating meat and fish together. According to the Talmud, you're not supposed to do that. And the reason apparently was back in those times, in the 500 AD, they thought it was unhealthy and harmful. They've since, more recent people have said there's nothing really unhealthy about it. But there's still Orthodox people who are strict about kashrut. still consider that halakha, and they eat fish separately. So if they're having a fish course, they usually use a separate plate. It's considered parv, so it's not considered meat, or just like anything else that's parv. It's not meat or dairy.
They don't eat it in the same meal, or they just put it on
You can eat
different
it in the
plates?
same meal, but you can't eat it on the same
On the
plate.
same
Like right, you couldn't serve no surf and turf.
That's
in other
right,
words.
surf and turf.
So
But you can
yeah,
have fish with dairy. You can have fish with
you can
dairy.
have fish with dairy because it's parv.
Right.
So yes,
What does parv actually mean?
parv is
Neither-
neither one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like bread is part of it.
Right, so you can eat it with dairy stuff, but meat obviously you couldn't. And that's all I got on
All right,
fish,
very
but more than, now you know.
How do you know?
Huh?
So what's the rationale for shellfish not being kosher? Like,
Again, there is no health
It
rationale.
just says in the Bible.
It says so.
Shellfish.
They don't have scales.
Yeah, but they're not fish, so, I mean, it could be something else, but they're just listed, like, they're on the do not eat list.
Yeah.
All right, we will continue with the Kiddush on page 55. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedishanu mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shalach kodsho v'yahavah v'ratzon infilanu zikaron l'ma'aseh bereshit ki hu yom tefillah l'mikra kodesh zecher l'tziat mitzrayim imanu v'acharta v'yotanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha v'yahavah v'ratzon infilanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashalat. Okay, there are no children here, but you can still bless each other if you want to. And for boys, we say Yisimcha Elohim Kefraim v'Kei Menashe. For girls, Yisimech Elohim Kasar Rivka Rachel Leah. Yivarech Adonai v'yishmerecha. Yaher Adonai panav elecha v'yichuneka. Yisar Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God bless you and keep you. May God's face shine on you and be gracious unto you. May God lift the divine face toward you and grant you peace. We'll remain standing for the Aleinu on 57. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol l'ateit g'ula l'yotzer bereshit shelo asanu k'goyei haratzot velo samanu k'mishpatot ha'adamah shelo sam chelkeinu bahem v'gor aleinu k'chol hamonam V'anachnu korim u'mishpachavim u'modim Lifnei melech malchei hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shehu noteh shamayim ve'yosed haaretz U'moshav yekaro b'shamayim mima'al U'shchinatu zo V'gaveh meromim Hu Eloheinu Enon Emet Malkeinu Efes Zulato Kakatu B'Torato V'yatata Hayom V'hashivota Elevavecha Ki Adonai Hu Elohim B'shamayim Mima'al Me'al haaretz mitachat einodeno. Kakatu b'toratach Adonai imloch le'olam ba'ed v'ne'emar v'haya Ushemo, Ushemo, Ushemo Echad. We can be seated.
Can you say the Morris Scottish?
We are not going to say Morris Scottish because we don't have a minion,
But you'll
but
read the names.
I will read the names.
Oh, what I need to say.
Tomorrow.
You have to do it another time because we're not
Can't
supposed to
say
say it
whatever
without
we
10 people.
Oh.
Okay, this Shabbat we lovingly recall the memory of our departed relatives and friends whose yahrzeit we observed during the week of the 27th Adar 2 through the 4th of Nisan. Dan Ben Zev, Barbara May Benjamin, Boris Karasik, Ariel David, Charles DeBear, Sam Frankel, Sidney Getzevitz, Ann Gour, Werner Gross, Jack Helfen, Dora Hirschman, Joseph Cantor, Eileen Kessler, Jack Kubalek, Samuel Lampart, Michael Lazar, Mary Levitt, Richard Levitt, Irving Lutz, Regina Mendel, Adolph Moore, Samuel Moses, Samuel Newman, Gail Raskin, Arlene Shub Rabinowitz, Tilly Rubin, Irvin Schwartz, Maurice Weiss, Manfred Wildman, and Leo Wood. And in recent days, Alexander Kaufman, the son of Richard and Audrey Kaufman, David Disco, the father of Matthew Disco, and Kukumi Satomi, the mother of Tsutomu Satomi. And may all of their memories be a blessing. And I'm sorry we don't have a minion to say Kaddish for them. Okay, we do have, you've been before, so you're probably not the first time guest, but I'll introduce, you're Nisha, correct? And Nisha told me she is in the Rabbi's conversion class, and she's come on Friday night yet, but not yet on Saturday, so we welcome you.
So
Thank
you
for
haven't
coming.
converted yet?
No, she's in the process.
Just in the beginning of
Oh.
the process.
So we only have 7, we don't have 8.
Right.
Well, I was going to count her though.
Yeah, yeah.
She counts in my book.
Yeah, really.
And so we hope you come back. Tomorrow, the women are putting on the service, special service. So good, very good lunch, yeah. Okay, so we will end with Yigdal on page 63. Yigdal Elohim Chai v'yishabach nimtza b'yenei tel b'tziyuto echad b'yachid k'yichudo nelam v'gam ein sof le'achduto ein lo demut haguf v'yeino guf lo na'rochela kedushato kadmon l'chol davar asher nivra Rishon bin Reshit l'Reshito Hino Adon Olam l'chol notzar Yorek Dulato Malchuto Shefan Nebuato Netano Elan Shesegulato Betifarto Lo Kam B'Yisrael Kemo She'od Nabihu Ma'abid et Munato Torah Kanet Notan Le'amoel Ayad Nevi'o Neman Beto Lo Ya Khalifa El Lo Ya Mirdato Le'olami L'Zulato Sofer Yodea Setarenu Madi L'Sof Davar Bechad Mato Gomel ish chesed k'mifalo Noten l'Rosh Hara k'rishato Yishlach l'ketz yamin l'shichenu U'lifdor b'chakeketz Yeshuato Meitim yechar Ye'el B'roch chasto Baruch hadei ad Shem tehilato Meitim Yechayel B'rov Chasto Baruch Hadei Ad Shem Tehilato Shabbat Shalom.